Everybody else has all those senses, but you get to the fifth dimension with playing music. It's more than just language. You're in a whole nother dimension.
How would you describe this dimension? How is it different?
Well, it's a whole other world that a lot of people don't have. They all appreciate music. They love to listen to it. But to actually understand it and to make it your own is pretty cool. Well, Ben Klinger.
I'm just trying to put words on it for people who are listening. Welcome, everybody, and thank you very much for listening to Piano Whisperer. I'm your host, Ben Klinger, and it is my pleasure and my privilege to be here. I also want to thank my sponsor, Classic Pianos, for making these episodes possible. I wanted to do something different today. I have often interviewed performers and composers and others who teach to some extent, but are primarily performers or composers. And I truly haven't interviewed someone with a piano teaching focus who also, of course, has a history of performing. So knowing that there are thousands of fine piano educators out there and many very good choices, I chose to interview someone who taught me personally in such a way that it changed the course of my life. If it weren't for Karen Pieper, I am certain I wouldn't be hosting Piano Whisperer today. I might have hosted Guitar Whisperer and quite possibly Futility Whisperer, but if my path had not crossed with Karen's specifically when it did, I suspect I would have abandoned the piano entirely and gone in a completely different direction. So, without making this episode about me, I would like to provide a little background about my own journey. I grew up in a small university town in Minnesota during the 1970s and 80s, about 3 hours from a major city. There weren't a lot of piano teacher options, especially for a non-conventional learner like me. But I started at age 4, and I went the traditional route of method books until I was about 11 and found myself pretty disinterested. I really did love pop music, but I stopped lessons and just played what I wanted to play when I wanted to play. And fortunately, there was a sheet music store a few blocks from my home, and I would walk there to pick up sheet music of whatever was popular at the time. And anyway, that went on for about 4 years. And when I was 15, my mom thought it would be good if I resumed lessons. So she signed me up with lessons at the university with a new professor. And I was a little reluctant because I wasn't particularly inspired. So I carefully told the teacher my story and how I wanted to learn music that was accessible to me and that I loved pop music. And she seemed to listen intently, and she said, "Great, I totally understand." And then she proceeded to pull out a Chopin waltz for me to play. I have nothing against Chopin. I love Chopin, but it took me years to really understand and appreciate the classics. But at that time, not so much. So I continued to play without zeal or really any kind of passion. Then, as a senior in high school, my classmate, Mark Thedeen, picked up electric guitar, and he was supernatural. He made his guitar scream and emote, and I was totally captivated. That was the kind of expression I was seeking. So I too picked up the electric guitar. I traded my trombone for a distortion pedal, and I was all in. The guitar unleashed a more tangible kind of expression of my 17-year-old self. I dropped piano like a hot potato and focused on guitar like I'd never focused on anything in my life. But fast forward a year or so, and I went to a live pop show at a well-known venue in Minneapolis at the time called First Avenue. And I saw a keyboardist playing a synth with a realistic piano sound in a way that completely inspired me. It knocked me out. And I thought, I can do this. So I drove home, and for whatever reason, I got to the piano. I played all night long, and my ears opened up for the first time after I saw that show. And to my own surprise, I found myself playing original music, which was a brand new experience for me. My hands almost felt like they knew what they were doing. So now I was enthralled with both piano and guitar. And I moved to Minneapolis for my freshman year of college studying liberal arts. And within 2 or 3 weeks of arriving, two of my new college friends, who are also musicians, took me to a bar to hear a local legend named Willie Murphy playing solo blues, just piano and voice at, I would call it a pretty divey club at the time called the 400 Club. It had a tiny little stage with an old upright, and Willie was playing, stomping, and singing like I had never heard before. Growing up in a small town without much exposure to this kind of thing, this was the first time I had heard blues, and Willie was an impassioned musician. I stood still, captivated, listening for the entire show. I tried to take it all in. And after the show, I just couldn't contain myself. I needed to learn this music. And without sounding too dramatic, I didn't feel I could continue on with my life doing anything else until I learned how to play it. But how? Who knew blues? I couldn't bear to study anything else, but I needed so much training. I was still an elementary player without much technique or theoretical knowledge, and many good teachers probably would not have taken me on. Enter Karen Pieper. Karen truly met me where I was. She found a way to elevate my inspiration. She found a way to give me a foundation and motivated me to practice, I kid you not, like 8 hours a day. And she, with her tutelage, got me accepted into Berklee College of Music within a year. I assure you this was not because of my natural talent. This is about Karen's ability to intersect lives and focus people's interest into a deeply satisfying result. So about Karen, she has her Master of Arts degree in music education from the University of Minnesota. She also holds a Master of Arts in counseling and psychological services from St. Mary's University in Minneapolis. It was in her psychotherapy practice that she discovered that emotions almost always override logic. And using that principle as a teacher has taught her to be more in the moment with education, to develop students' curious rather than anxious minds. As a working musician over the years, she has been the music director for several churches. Her theater credits include being music director of Dudley Riggs' Brave New Workshop, Illusion Theater, Stepping Stone Theater, Theater de la Jeune Lune, and playing original improvised piano music for dozens of silent movies at the Oak Street Cinema and Walker Arts Center in Minneapolis. She is the co-founder of the jazz quintet Spirit Jazz. She has been a piano instructor at MacPhail Center for the Arts since the 1980s, and she's been teaching privately for even longer. So everyone, please welcome my very special guest, Karen Pieper.
Hello. Thank you, Ben.
You are welcome. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm so psyched. So my first question, we're going to do things out of order here. How in the world did you transform my all-impassioned interest into something focused and productive? Like, how did you do that?
Well, this was a long time ago. So what are we talking like?
What? You're talking like we're old or something.
We talked about using the Eric Chris book, which was simple enough that you could get some results pretty fast.
I guess you had me creating the sounds from that book,
Yeah,
right?
we were working with that book. That's what I remember the most. I have always thought that you should take your student or your client where they're at.
You have to recognize where they are in their journey, right?
And I relate to that because not knowing everything that I want to know, I want somebody to take me where I'm at, whether it be in a counseling session or in a piano lesson. I'd want the same thing. And I recognize that the traditional style does not work for everybody. And I saw the enthusiasm, and I know we just connected. I remember one time I forgot my glasses and I had my sunglasses at a prescription. We ended up wearing our sunglasses together. So we had a lot of fun. And that's what I remember. We had a lot of fun and we built on that. And fun is always good. That gives in counseling and in piano lessons.
Yeah.
So creating fun, having a good time. And I just remember we really used that one Eric Chris book. I don't remember the title offhand.
It's called Beginning Blues Piano.
Okay. And I know that we had some good success with that.
Yes. So you had me writing in improvisations within the song. I think the first song was like called Heartland Blues or something. but you showed me the blues scale. Who would have thought such a thing existed, right? And, when I came to you, I remember telling you about Willie Murphy, and of course you knew who Willie Murphy
Mhm.
was. And I said, I didn't even know how to describe him. I didn't know the language. I didn't know any of that. And you said, you mean you want to do this? And you basically said, da 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 da
Right.
da da. And I was like, yes, that's it. That's what I wanted to do. And so I think, yes, you then said, hey, go get this beginning blues book called, Beginning Blues Piano by Eric Chris. And then we got it, but then we worked with those songs and we didn't just play the songs. And that was my first deviation, right? You showed me where I could insert improv. And yes, at that time it was written out improv. You taught me kind of how to feel it a little bit, I think. But still, the thing is, this crazy kid comes into you to take lessons. When you meet someone new, how do you kind of assess where they are? Like, is it just an intuitive thing? Do you ask certain questions? What kind of communication are you looking for, or do you try to cultivate? Do you even think about it?
Well, sure. That sounds like the way I approach counseling a little bit more. Asking questions that I know now are more open-ended and I get a sense of where they're coming from. After getting the master's and emphasizing jazz education, I have more of that get right in there, and even if it's just 2 notes, say something, get that creativity right off the bat.
So even if you're doing classical music, that kind of thought process makes their communication their own, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, and I do that from day one. If a student comes to me at 6 years old, we're doing that right off the bat. So I cultivating that mindset immediately.
Like you own the communication, basically, right?
We're gonna learn both skills. So somebody like you, what would I do now? I would say, let's do a little bit of something that you're comfortable with, like something that was written out, and let's add on to it. And then I would probably be more specific with, okay, you have 2 notes you're allowed to use, and we have 2 measures. We're gonna do a little conversation and go back and forth with that. And then maybe using that blues scale. So for like C blues, that would be like a C and E flat, maybe just use those 2 notes. Those are easy for people to hear, that minor third, and make that work.
Yeah, right. So they're really listening.
Can have that ability, but also that confidence. Small steps are always more effective than big steps. Just like, slow is fast in music, and the same thing with counseling too. It's slower steps get you ultimately to your goals.
Now, you play classical music too. So do you take a similar approach with the classical piece when you're trying to get someone away from just looking at the notes, but to feel the notes, to kind of own the communication of the phrases? How do you kind of implement that same strategy? Do you?
I think what you're saying is, how do you make that piece feel to the student like it's their own?
Yeah.
We would talk about, depending on the student, talk about the theory, talk about what's written already, and recognize that this is obviously somebody else's composition and not your own, but what did this person want you to hear and play? I think
Yeah.
actually improv makes it more your own, even if you're
Yeah.
reading classical music, because you're more aware of the work behind it. And
Exactly. I think
you have
that's,
to understand theory better if you are gonna improvise than I think you have to in classical. So, you have to, ultimately, as you get further and understand your chords and understand the patterns and to recognize patterns going on in classical. People often, like, just look at the key signature. Well, that tells me the key, but I don't have to know anything more than that. I just have to know when I have to sharp the F, if I'm a G. But then you get to know a little bit more about how those chords work together, etcetera, if you're
yeah.
playing more in that kind of context and understanding it a little bit better. But that's not true for everybody. A lot of, wonderful players understand, and, composers, so but I do feel for myself it enhances my understanding of a piece.
Yeah. I think I'm making that assumption. If you're teaching that as a supplemental thing, that when they go back and they do classical and they're reading, they have a better sense
Mhm,
of the expression. So
mhm.
now this is really interesting. To me, it's interesting. Hopefully, it's interesting to everyone else too. But having worked in the piano business, I've met hundreds of people who tell me that their kids lost interest and stopped playing. I've heard that many, many times, and I find that depressing. I often tell them their kids didn't lose interest in the piano. They lost interest in the music they were playing.
Mm,
Sort of like if you don't like eating spinach, eating it every day for the next 90 days isn't going to really help,
mm.
you know? And it's odd to me how common it is for people to play music they hate for months and then reach the conclusion that they lost interest in the piano. And often when I ask them if they've communicated with their teacher that they don't like what they're playing, they almost always say, no, I haven't talked to the teacher. And they assume the issue is with them. And so, what do you do when you sense interest waning?
It's a family thing, you know, if they don't get results and they don't get positive experience performing, they're less likely to play. But I'm trying to give them a positive experience in performing with having them play the recital with a professional jazz band. So that makes it fun and has the community involved. I know when I was in middle school, I was really motivated, partly because I was allowed to take the train to the piano teachers, and I thought I was so grown up, and, it was cool. But my mom kept on me in my primary grades, and my piano teacher did too, so and my piano teacher, I think I've told you about this, that she was, a pianist at a piano bar in the Chicago area, and she'd sing, and she was really motivated to teach me chords, even before I was even interested, because she was so motivated. And had me playing, like 5th grade playing Try to Remember the Days in September and all these things and right off the bat. And so I was thinking about chords. So by the time I reached junior high, it was all negative enforcement. It was like, if you want to keep taking piano, you have to pay it for it now. So maybe I was motivated by that with my babysitting money and taking the train.
But what was it that made you want to play? So I want to go back because we were talking about people who quit. Now, you were motivated. Have you found yourself bringing people back from disinterest through finding the right pieces? Like you did that with me.
I let them have a say in what they want to play, but it's also like increase their type of skill. But a lot of people, they are so comfortable reading grand staff and they don't want, that's so hard to improvise. It's so hard. They don't do that.
But those are people who actually enjoy doing that. And I think
Mhm.
that's fine. Like if you love reading, that's great. My question is, how do we keep people from quitting? And it strikes me that so much of it is, I mean, it can be chemistry with the teacher for sure,
Mhm.
right? But it can also be chemistry with the music. I just feel that when someone's got that intense interest at some point in their life, that they they don't really lose it. It gets misdirected or lost. I mean, it's not like they lose interest as in the interest is no longer there. It's more like they lost it somewhere. Like it's buried under some rock. And maybe that rock is a piece of music they don't like, or maybe it's that they don't. And I'm just throwing that out there. I'm not insisting on being right on that. I guess I kind of wanted to ask your opinion, having taught for so many decades.
Well, a lot of times kids just want to be with their friends. And like, for instance, if they're playing in a pit with the school's play or they're singing in a choir and they have more contact, they're a little more apt to be involved with music in general. I'm really grateful for my teacher that I learned both styles. Like when I play in a church, I can read a hymn like upside down and then I can embellish it. So to be able to do that and to be able to lead a band and have the fun with that and then have that. So I think for me, part of the reason I kept with it is because I had a bigger skill set developing.
But you also then had a social context. And maybe
Yes.
that's another point we're
Hmm.
arriving at, which is that you're not doing it in isolation. The reason I'm bringing up classical music periodically, although my background is primarily jazz, is because I feel we lose a lot of classical musicians. And
Hmm.
I'm wondering, if something like ensemble playing, I'm wondering if that social experience for musicians would really galvanize the interest, just playing with other people, playing in different ensembles, quartets, trios.
A week and a half ago, a local high school, Southwest High School, they rented Minnesota's Orchestra Hall and they had like maybe 5 ensemble. It was snowing. In fact, it felt unsafe. I thought I'm going to be the only one there because it's so unsafe. It's like 5 inches of snow. Get there, the parking ramp's full. All the kids came, I mean, like, literally hundreds. It's such a huge part of that culture there.
Yeah.
So, I just think of them as like, oh, that's pretty much a conservatory almost for the kids,
Yeah.
that there's so many options for them. There's several choirs, there's, bands, and there's orchestras, and there's opportunities like crazy for them to play. And, I mean, I wish I had done all that in high school. What a fun atmosphere to have. And then there's also the fact that there's really dedicated parents. They come out on a snowy day, and I mean dangerously snowy, and they're there.
And that's Minnesota in July, right?
What do you mean in July? In December.
I was joking. Minnesota's
Okay.
always cold.
No, it's the most snow we've had in a couple years, so it kinda surprised us.
I know. Sure, we used to say the mosquito was a Minnesota state bird. No, it does get hot,
But I
but
was so impressed that all these people came, and I
yeah.
was about 10 minutes early, and honestly, the ramp was packed, and people were still coming in.
So they're doing something right.
Yeah, and they're keeping the kids involved, and it's not, restricted to just a few kids, and there's just a culture there that's really strong, and the parents really appreciate it, or the caretakers. They're really strong and supportive.
There are 2 takeaways that I have that are actually kind of new takeaways for me because I kind of was stuck in my own thought like it's just the type of music that they're playing, which I think there's some of that, but it's also social. The social
Mhm,
element of playing with other people is important.
mhm.
The other takeaway I've already forgotten.
Okay. It doesn't
The
always have to be always just piano, but that it's all part of the whole package.
Yeah, it's
And,
fun. Oh, fun. That's the other one. Fun.
mhm,
It's social and it's fun.
yeah, and it's a priority. But it's like some of the best students are ones who are combining sports and music, and their
Yep.
families just make it work.
Yep. This is also telling me, you can be a serious musician and have fun in the early years. I mean, I think as a seasoned musician, it is fun. Music is
Mhm,
just fun, right? And a challenge is fun. But when you're younger, and like you say, there's, maybe you want to go play sports, you want to do this
mhm,
other stuff. How do you make it compelling? I think the social aspect makes it fun. And then you don't feel like you're missing out on something because you do have this social
mhm,
connection with people. So
sure.
that is interesting. Okay, that might have been common knowledge to some, but not to me.
Especially when you're in, like, a high school and middle school, you wanna build that community, and you're getting
Yeah,
independent, and this is the community that you're involved with,
yeah.
and it's a positive thing.
I often say interests do ebb and flow,
Mhm,
right? And a lot of times there's an ebb, and that's just a part of, like you said, they have a temporary
mhm,
um, lapse in interest, but then they resume their interest, like I did between 11 and 17. And it sometimes takes a point of inspiration. In my case, maybe a live show. I found that most adults who play seriously had some live music
mhm,
experience that completely inspired them to want to resume playing. And I can say this candidly. I mean, I've met tens of thousands of piano buyers, and I've never ever met anybody who regretted playing piano.
mhm.
Never. I've never met someone who said, "I'm so mad I learned how to play piano," but it's never happened.
That's what I tell
Eh,
students,
eh,
I never says, "Gee, I wish I played that video game longer instead of playing
Yeah,
piano."
yeah.
It's always the other way around.
All right. Well, this is good. It's really about developing lifelong piano players,
Mhm,
right? That's the goal. So even though I took piano lessons from you myself, in learning more about you, I newly discovered something very important to your instructional approach, which is being in the moment.
mm.
So, why do you think it's so important to be in the moment? And how do you integrate being in the moment with like accomplishing goals that take time?
I think a way to get rid of anxiety, so I'm gonna be blending my 2 professions. I learned as a counselor to be more in the moment with my client. I have to quit thinking about myself so much, but really concentrating on what the person is asking and saying to you. So that's doesn't come overnight though. But I think it's a healthier way to be. No, it is healthier for your brain. But the reality is we don't know what's going to happen in life. What you can really say is, did I act with integrity? Was I honest? Am I willing to make mistakes? Am I able to say, well, this wasn't perfect, but at least I tried and I'm going to get better? I know
Hmm.
there's a master class from Amy Poehler, the comedian. It's all about that too. In the introduction to it, she says, if you're always going to be waiting for that perfect moment's going to pass. You're never going to get it. So you just
Yep.
got to get in there. Renee Brown she's a psychologist from Houston, Texas. She's all about that. That's how we can be vulnerable to others, and it's actually more appealing. It takes some time, especially if we've been raised in chaotic households and we are expected to be perfect, and our value is based on our accomplishments and outward validation rather than inward validation. So if you have developed that inward validation that, well, I'm talking honestly and I'm speaking from the heart, I'm taking risks, I'm trying to expand my comfort zone. So
So,
that's all very healthy stuff.
so how do you encourage people to be in the moment? How do you do that?
Well, that's what I was saying, like with my teaching, even since when I was teaching you, even if I'm saying that 2 notes, just do 2 notes and I'll
I
ask you a
see.
question. And, I was in the improv theater as the music director. And even though I was not on stage, I certainly learned from the improv. We would create our shows, but we also had a weekly improv set. And I
Yep.
had to be in the moment. I had to watch, and I didn't know what they were gonna do.
Yeah,
I
that
had to
was
be
my
in the
next
moment
question.
for
What
that.
did that look like playing piano for an improv theater company? Now, Dudley Riggs, in my own mind, it was kind of a legendary
Yeah, that's right.
satirical improv theater company,
Mhm.
and you're playing piano. And I remember the music going to those shows before I knew you. And you were probably the one playing that music. But what was that like?
School of Hard Knocks for me. I mean, it was getting a true master's class. My first show, I think I tried to write everything down. I couldn't because it wouldn't be strictly like that. I didn't have the skill set I have now. I'd have my little library of background music that I would memorize and just have it
No,
ready to
but this
go.
was your own, like you created that, right? That's your
Well,
background
some of
music
it
that
was
you,
great, like, I would, and the same thing playing for, the Buster Keaton, the silent movies, I would create themes, and I would remember the chord patterns, and then I would just work around with those chords, and I kind of figure out how much to play, being in the moment with the audience. If they were responding to something, I would emphasize it. If they weren't, I maybe not. So,
so how do you do that? Like, how do you emphasize something? And I mean, I'm just trying to imagine you're
I would
watching a
elaborate more.
movie.
I guess I just would elaborate more or, embellish it more, just milk it.
You take, so meaning, but you're not playing set music, right? You're like
Yeah.
improvising, right?
Well,
So
but I have a set chord pattern in my head,
yeah.
and I would keep it simple enough that I could remember and that I could switch. I did a lot of, like, just going from major to minor, the relative major to a minor, and, like our friend Autumn Leaves, just having that kind of sense. But it's another kind of back to that theme of expanding a skill set to keep you interested. So feel like when I play music in the church hymns, that's a skill set. And that's being in the moment and reading that. But when I'm playing from a lead sheet, that's a whole nother skill set. And when I was playing in silent movies or theater in general, that's a whole nother mindset or another way of thinking about music.
Yeah.
Then I think
So
I'm actually the closest to what I think people that can just play music and don't even know what they're playing necessarily, and the wonder people that I don't have to go through those patterns. They just know here's a sound to sound, and I would go from sound to sound more.
yeah, as you got more experienced, right?
As I got more experience, yes. That didn't just happen overnight.
Right. So basically, chords were just a huge bedrock for you,
Yes.
right? Just
That's my
understanding.
Yep, that's my way of organizing it in my head.
Likewise.
Yeah.
Okay. So you see something on stage that's funny, to maybe do major chord with maybe some funky tension in there, right?
Yeah, yeah, I know how
Or
yeah. Exactly.
if
I'd
you're
find some
some
happy or some familiar happy tune that they know.
Right.
But when we actually created the shows, we would experiment, and then those were more set music, or we'd create songs to go for the show.
But every show is a little different.
Yes, but the improv show was a little different type of thing. We would have that after 2 shows on Saturday night, like, starting at midnight. It was kind of late, and then we'd have a little mini improv show after the main actual play. Person that, was in counseling, and he also had been an actor at Dudley Riggs. I know he would come to different businesses and theater just to talk about being in the moment, and you have these games that you throw the ball to, you don't know if you're gonna be the one next, just have to be alert and having fun, having games. And that kind of is like with play therapy and creative arts therapy, that's a big part of how to try and create fun. Well, for right-handed people, it's our right hemisphere of our brain is more of the emotion, and it's just really good to get that going. More creative when you're having fun with it.
How about learning moments? Any like moment that happened in your either theater days or your movie days where you're like, that was a big moment of learning? Anything come to mind?
Well, I think, being at the U and getting my master's, post Ben Klinger teaching, just playing with the top band at that time. It was such a high, like, "Oh my goodness, this is a whole new standard." And then I want students to feel that. That's why I wanna hire professionals, so they have a chance, even at the early days, to get that high of, like, "This is really fun to play with other people." And if they can have another situation where they're playing with people more that are their peers, I feel the same thing. Have a band that can, have opportunities rather, that you are stretching yourself, and then maybe stretch yourself more as a leader in a band that's more your peers.
Yeah.
So, I guess that was a huge aha, like, waking up moment when I got into that good band at the U in my master's, and I was kind of walking on air. And also the silent movies, I was always like, "Oh, I can do that pretty easily." Relative. This is not as hard as I would think.
Interesting. Now, how did that even happen? How did you get that first gig?
Oak Street Cinema doesn't exist anymore, but the owner of Oak Street Cinema was a husband of somebody that worked with me in Illusion Theater. And, he had known that I'd done the Dudley Riggs, and he suggested it. But it was actually more serious silent movies and, kind of more of an art house situation, and it actually came to me pretty easily. I would have at that time, like, a video, because we had videos then, and these TV/videos, and I'd put it on the piano and just study it and study it, so I could have that work. And, that's kind of fun. I wish that there were more opportunities like that. I guess even as we have this conversation, I'm having the realization when you ask about, keeping students interested is how can you develop their skill set? Maybe that is like introducing a new composer to them. For me, it's been a lot of just how do you get them more involved with, something, or get the skill set expanded a little bit more.
Now, when I was a piano teacher, which lasted only about 4 or 5 years, but I had like 20 to 40 students a week during that time. This is in the early 90s. I felt like, for the most part, I was a therapist, especially for my teenage students. Um, so do you find that your psychotherapy and musicianship, they're just all kind of intertwined in one sort of snowball?
Well, it's back to that emotions override logic. I try not to be an actual therapist at all.
Well, for
I
sure.
mean,
Yeah, yeah,
but just to say, like, how are things going? I mean, in both therapy and lessons, they just want to be liked, listened to. Just
yeah,
casual conversation, just asking them casual conversation shows that you care, that you
yeah,
like them. I feel like that's very similar in both. And that's actually one of
yeah,
the reasons I thought I could be a pretty good psychotherapist is because
yeah,
I have that one-on-one skill. But I became even better teacher because of psychotherapy, because I became quite objectively learning to listen to the emotions more, got
yeah.
the skills
Listening
to
to the
listen to that
emotions.
and actually ask and say, well, is there anything we can do to make this a little bit better? The teaching has helped me with the psychotherapy to help learn steps by steps on how we're going what are our goals
Yeah.
and how can we keep at them. That's what he's talking about, small steps. And that's kind of with piano teaching.
So I normally ask this at the beginning of the interview, like I said, but so why did you start playing and what was it that kept you inspired?
Well, I've been playing for a long time. I was 4 years old when my mom first started teaching me. And I guess it kind of came to me. She remembers that I once had a fight with her about it and not wanting to. And she saw that I was kind of easy with it. She said I always had these piano fingers. So there was a time that she said you could give it up. And I don't remember, but I was that young that I must have been like kindergarten, first grade, because I don't remember feeling that way. And then I didn't give it up. I rethought about it. She put it back in my court, I guess. And then I said, yes, I'll do it. My mom was the children's choir director at church. And it was, you can quit piano when you're in sixth grade, but you have to be in choir. That was a given. I cannot give that up. But you'll be allowed to quit piano if you stick with choir. So it wasn't like, that's 1960s. So when I got to seventh grade, I was paying for my own piano lessons.
That's amazing. And
That's a
you're doing that
different
with
culture, though,
babysitting
different
money.
era. What's that?
Yeah, yeah. That was with babysitting money, you said.
Babysitting money that I would have
But
to pay.
you must have loved it because you chose to spend your money on piano lessons. That's unusual.
Well, it's also a different era, I think. Like I said, I was able to
Yeah.
take the train. I thought it was pretty cool stuff. That I could
And
do
that was
that
a
and I could
motivator.
start playing chords, and I thought I had a pretty cool teacher playing the piano bar, and then I had a Shakey's pizza teacher, Shakey's piano thing. I thought that was pretty cool.
So did you take these chords? Did you also play pop songs and sing and play piano? Were you one of the kids that would do that? Like,
No, not really. I sing all the time because I have to, but I'm not a singer. And I never have really wanted to be a singer, but I have to sing all the time with students. But
right.
no, I never wanted to sing so much. I just thought it
But
was
you,
so cool, and if you could get to that point of playing that, that would be just really cool, that you're in a I kind of feel like, everybody else has all those senses, but you get to the fifth dimension with playing music. It's me more than just language, you're in a whole nother dimension. Something like that.
how would you describe that? That's interesting. How would you describe this dimension? How is it different?
Well, it's a whole other world that a lot of people don't have. They all appreciate music, they love to listen to it. But to actually understand it and to make it your own is pretty cool. Well, Ben Klinger.
I'm
That's
just trying to put words on it for people
yeah.
who are listening. So how would you describe this dimension? Because it does involve all your senses, right? It's
Well, for
definitely
some, it's even like it could be spiritual. I don't know if it's spiritual, but it's like you have like a window into another world.
yeah,
I suppose maybe it would be like the equivalent of people that don't know how to read, but then you learn how to read and you have a whole nother dimension of
I
understanding
see,
books.
of life.
I don't know how to draw very well. I like art, but I don't wonder how that must feel to actually see something and actually be able to
Okay.
create it, replicate it. That would be a kinda cool dimension to know how to do that.
It's true though. You hear a musical moment, like if you're a musician and you're listening to music and you're an educated musician and you hear a moment in a composition that you just know is like completely inspired, right? Like they didn't have to put that there. Like they were going in this one direction. They could have done this safe thing, but they heard it, right? So a lot of
Mhm.
times with composition or improvisation, it starts they conceive it in their mind, right? And then they play it like in a perfect world, you're playing what you're hearing, right? 100%. And when a musician is listening to something great musically, you can recognize like it's almost like it is like very much divine inspiration, right? Where this thing just happens. And there are certain moments that I think of in music and written music where like how in the world did this person think of this at this moment? How in the world did this person hear this at this moment? This was like almost given to them to express to us, right? But if you're not a musician, you may not recognize how incredibly special that moment was. Do you know what I'm saying?
I think of even just watching sports that are people that are that good at sports.
Right.
To be that good of an athlete and how much they've worked on that and how much I think that might be like it. Like, what would that be like? Or and when you're really in a team and you just got the rhythm down, that might be what I think a lot of people yearn for with sports, frankly,
Yeah.
and they can get into that and they can like, they're just on top of the
Right.
form. It's like
It's the
kind of
same
a
thing.
spiritual thing, or like
It's
a dance and you're a ballerina. Man, oh
yeah.
man, I would be great. I would that's what I yearned for it for a while there, to be a good dancer.
But that's right. You have these different interests where you recognize this greatness, like definitely in athletics. You can see, I mean, that's one of the beauties about the Olympics, right? They go for it in public, right? And they're able to do this thing,
Yeah,
right?
well,
That,
like, I
that,
think you'd be flying, like, you dive or something, like, I can't imagine how I could
right.
or go
And so
super
what,
fast on the ski hill, you know?
and I think more people can relate to that moment in
Mhm,
sports, but in music, it's like a level of communication. I think that's the thing. Sports is like when you see something amazing, it does seem divinely inspired or divinely given to that individual to be able to achieve
mhm,
that. But with music, there's a layer of communication about that because it's a shared moment, not because we all experienced it at the same time, but because the person playing or composing meant to communicate this to people. And some of us get it and some of us don't. And that doesn't make us more special if we get it, but it means that we are the recipients of this thing. And there are certain moments in music to me that they just break out of nowhere. You're like, that's crazy. Well, it could be an improvised moment, it could be something else.
mhm.
But yeah, we share that.
So, just to be in that context of that is just, to have skill that allows you to get a touch of that. It's, touching the sun or whatever that, I cure it. I guess I've been always motivated that as a teacher, how do people do that and
Yeah.
make that work? And
Yep.
oh, here's a fun fact: as I'm getting older, lots of things are not working as well, but piano
Yeah.
just keeps on getting better.
Yeah. Right.
Ears
That's a
keep
cool
getting
thing.
better.
Yeah.
And, I'm very happy to say that can be I had an aunt that lived till, like, 93, and she played piano and organ in her church till she was 90, and maybe I'll be like that. That's the kinda that's
Yeah.
infamous, piano teachers can live forever, so
Yep. So, if you could share any one thing from your journey as a point of wisdom for others, what would that be?
and keep the beat, be strong, use your metronome, learn to play
I'm
it
looking
off
for
beat,
something more philosophical.
philosophical. That is. Well, keep on expanding, keep on pushing yourself. Set some goals and try and make it happen even if they don't happen. At least you're trying. That would be like Brené Brown, if you read some Brené Brown.
Keep learning.
Yeah.
I have a little bit of an allergic reaction to keep pushing. But see, pushing and learning are they don't have to be the same.
No.
Like learning is like a joy to me. Pushing is like but keep expanding.
Yeah, maybe that's all. They try and expand the skill set. I guess that's what I've been trying to do. I didn't realize that until I talked to you right now, that that's part of the interest that kept going.
Is there anything else you'd like to talk about that we haven't already discussed?
I'll probably think of it later, but not right now. It's been a
All
joy
right.
to talk to you. It's been
Oh,
fun to
thank
get
you.
to know you again. So
Yeah.
Ben Klinger and I have this friendship like every 10 years, so it's kind of fun.
Yeah. Aw. Well, thank you,
Okay, thank you.
Karen Pieper. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me. It has been a joy. And also, thank you for investing in me when it really mattered in my development. Like, I don't know. What would my life have been like without Karen Pieper? I really have no idea.
Well, you flatter me, Ben, but it's yourself. It's kismet.
Well, thank you nonetheless. And thank you, listeners, too. I'm so grateful that you took the time to listen and to join us. Really, you're what makes all of this worthwhile. And of course, thank you to Classic Pianos, who continues to sponsor these podcasts. If you do enjoy listening to these interviews, I would be really grateful if you would take the time and to rate and review the show on whatever platform you use. I look forward to the next one too, but thanks again. Take care of yourselves out there, and I will look forward to seeing you next time. Bye-bye.